Sir, it is some time, nearly 3 months, since I had the opportunity of speaking in this House at length on the provisions of this bill as it was originally presented to the Lok Sabha. Honorable members may recall the general discussion on the floor of this House and the appraisal which was given to the bill. During the period that the bill has been before the Parliament, it has been subjected to a wide variety of comments by individuals and institutions representing various shades of opinion. These have all been taken into consideration, and after the due deliberations, certain amendments were proposed by the government. These have been considered and incorporated in the bill as passed by the Lok Sabha. Honorable members are undoubtedly aware of the various provisions of the bill as originally introduced. The provisions were explained briefly in the explanatory memorandum issued by my ministry and circulated to honorable members. A further note explaining the various taxation proposals in greater detail was also subsequently circulated. I will not therefore weary the House by going into these provisions again and shall therefore dwell chiefly on the salient features of the amendments that were incorporated in the bill during its passage in the Lok Sabha. Sir, so far as personal taxation is concerned, the main emphasis of the critics has been against the lowering of the exemption limit on personal income tax and the reduction of the income tax burden on the higher slabs of income. On these points, I have been at pains to explain the objectives of our taxation policy. I had mentioned in my budget speech that the main reason for reduction in the existing rates at the higher levels of income was that in practice very high rates of direct taxation at the top brackets of income tend to erode the tax base and encourage tax evasion. It is no doubt true that the maximum rate of income tax and super tax applicable to the top brackets of income is proposed to be reduced from about 92% to a little less than 77% for earned incomes and 84% for unearned incomes. But this reduction is marginally rates is not to be viewed in isolation. Under the tax pattern, income tax does not stand by itself. It is supplemented by the wealth tax and the expenditure tax. I have also pointed out on the floor of the Lok Sabha only recently, and I would like, if I may, to repeat here that I have stated there that the integrated tax structure that has been proposed in the budget this year makes it necessary that the tax system should be broad based. The existing exemption limit of Rs 4,200 is an unduly large multiple of the average level of income in this country. This should be reduced to such a reasonable level as would widen the sphere of taxation and release the tax base from its present inelasticity. It is only reasonable that persons within the lower income brackets should also make their contributions, however small, to the state revenues. With development, more and more persons will come within the income groups which are now brought within the purview of income tax. Furthermore, with the income tax net cast wider, it will facilitate checking of tax evasion in the immediately higher brackets, which is a very important consideration so far as the lowering of the limits is concerned. Another amendment which I sponsored in the Lok Sabha for providing some relief and encouragement to the middle class investor relates to the increase in the normal surcharge exemption limit by the amount of dividends received on equity shares, subject to a maximum of Rs 1,500. Sir, this has been brought in largely because of a complaint that has been made that the tax on companies would unduly affect, which I do not think it would. Nevertheless, the opinion is that it would unduly affect the position of the small investor in equity shares. Relief is sought to be given to him this way that the cumulative effect would mean much greater relief than as if we made a refund of half percent to the him of the company's tax collected. By another of my amendments to the bill, the additional surcharge of 15% on unearned income has been separated from the other two surcharges in order to put it beyond doubt that the proceeds from the former with the surcharge on unearned income will form part of the divisible pool in which the states are to participate. This was the original intention, and it was felt that the divisible pool would not be affected. But certain queries were raised by the chief ministers of various states, and the law ministry felt that the position was somewhat nebulous, and so we thought we would make the position clear. There is another important amendment which I would like to mention. Sir, even though the bill comes to this house for the first time, I had touched upon this subject in my budget speech in May last, and its principles figured prominently in the course of the journal discussion on the budget. The two booklets explaining generally the new taxation proposals have also been circulated to the honorable members of this House. The House will therefore agree with me that it is unnecessary to cover the same ground in detail again in my introductory speech, especially as the various provisions will come up for detailed consideration later on. I will confine myself only to the changes that have been made in the original provisions of the bill in the course of its passage in the other House. At the outset, I should say that the broad principles of a tax on wealth have received warm support not only in the other house but also from a large section of the public, though there was criticism over some particular provisions also. I had re examined the original provisions in the light of the criticisms and also representations received from various quarters, and such re examination has only strengthened the justification for the tax. Sir, a tax on wealth is new to this country, but it is not new to the world. It constitutes a very vital element in the taxation systems of most progressive countries, particularly in the European and American continents. Its importance should not, in my opinion, be judged purely from its revenue content. I do not for a moment say that revenue considerations should be absolutely ruled out, as they are very important, but the real importance of the tax, from my point of view, lies in the fact that it facilitates the reorientation of the tax structure into an integrated pattern. It is not only a welcome supplement to income tax but also a corrective to it, by which certain objectives of tax policy which cannot be achieved through income tax alone can be achieved through the combined operation of all the new taxes. Sir, in this connection, I may mention that there has been much controversy about the question of levying tax, wealth tax on companies. The Lok Sabha went very carefully into this matter and came into the conclusion that, having regard to the corporate structure in India, it is possible to exclude companies as such from the levy. As the House is aware, every individual Hindu undivided family and joint stock company will be liable to pay wealth tax. So far as individuals are concerned, the exemption limit is rupees 2 lakhs, and for companies the limits is rupees 5 lakhs. No changes have been made by the other house in regard to the limits for these two classes. For Hindu undivided families, the exemption limit has been raised from rupees 3 lakhs to rupees 4 lakhs. At the same time, the next slab range has been reduced from rupees 10 lakhs to rupees 9 lakhs. Taking companies first, all companies, whether public or private and whether Indian or foreign, are liable to pay wealth tax. Ordinarily, a resident company will pay the tax on its total wealth, whether such wealth is held in India or outside. A non-resident company, however, will pay the tax only on its Indian wealth. Under Clause 45, certain companies are totally excluded from wealth tax. The bill as it originally stood excluded banking companies, insurance companies, and certain financial institutions sponsored by the central government. To this list has now been added shipping companies and institutions for the promotion of art, culture, commerce, etc., which are not established for the purpose of making profit and which are registered as companies for the sake of convenience of administration. Another important change is that a wealth tax holiday will be granted to industrial companies for 5 successive assessment years immediately following the date of incorporation. This concession has been provided not only as an incentive for promotion of new industrial enterprises but also with a view to avoiding any financial difficulty to such companies in the initial stages of their organization. The wealth tax holiday will also be extended to new industrial units of existing companies which are created by way of substantial expansion of the existing undertakings. As a corollary to the wealth tax holiday for new industrial companies, shareholders in such companies will also be similarly dealt with no on the value of their shares for a like period of successive assessment years in which the companies themselves will be enjoying the wealth tax holiday. I may point out to you that because of the attitude of the mill owners of sugar factories of Bihar and Uttar Pradesh, there is an increasing demand among the peasants of these states that these sugar factories should be taken over by the government and run as public enterprises. As pointed out by our friend, even under the existing law, it is possible for the government to do so if the government so desires.